Hey everyone, it's Janine. First off, I just want to say a genuine thank you to everyone who took the time to watch my last video. I'm truly blown away by the support. I wasn't sure anyone would want to sit with me and examine these mysteries, but you're here and you're engaged and you're asking the same questions that keep me awake at night. So truly, thank you. Now, let's get into this next story. One of those cases that's been explained about a dozen different ways, none of which actually make much sense, which is exactly why it caught my attention. This is the story about the mysterious death of Günther Stoll. Günther Stoll wrote 6 letters on a scrap of paper, stared at them for a moment, then drew a line through each one. Y-O-G-T-Z-E. Crossed out, as if rejecting whatever thought had compelled him to write them down. Within hours, he would be dead on a dark German highway. Those same letters tucked in his jacket pocket like a message from another world. It was October 25th, 1984, West Germany. The kind of autumn evening where mist clings to the Rhine Valley and ordinary people retreat indoors, settling into the comfortable predictability of their lives. Günther was 41, methodical, unremarkable. A food engineer who checked quality controls and went home to his wife in the evening. He was the sort of man who never made headlines. Until that Thursday night, when something shifted. His wife heard him muttering at the kitchen table around 6:30. "YOGTZE," he said, pronouncing each letter distinctly. When she asked what it meant, he brushed her off. "Nothing important," he said. "Just work nonsense." But his hands were shaking as he folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. The evening unraveled slowly. Günther grew restless, checking the windows, pacing between rooms. He mentioned feeling watched, but couldn't explain by whom. Around 10 o'clock, he announced he was going out for a drink. His wife barely looked up from her television program. Günther rarely went anywhere after dinner, but lately he'd been acting strange, paranoid almost. She figured a beer might settle his nerves. He drove to Zum Hirschen, a local pub 10 minutes away. The bartender remembered him clearly, not because he was a regular, but because of how he carried himself that night. Günther sat alone, nursing a single beer, constantly glancing toward the windows as if expecting someone. Or something. He stayed exactly 30 minutes, paid, and left without a word. That should have been the end of it. A quiet man, having a quiet drink, before going home to his quiet life. Except Günther Stoll never made it home. The next morning, a truck driver spotted an overturned car alongside Autobahn 3, 19 miles from Günther's home. Günther was underneath it, alive, but barely conscious. Severe head trauma and internal bleeding. He died in the hospital 4 hours later without ever explaining where he'd been or what had happened. The location made no sense. To get from the pub to that stretch of highway, Günther would have had to drive in the opposite direction from his home, through countryside he had no reason to visit. The road was wet from recent rain, and police initially assumed he'd lost control in the dark. A tragic, but unremarkable accident. Then they found the note. YOGTZE. 6 letters that meant nothing to anyone. Not his wife, not his colleagues, not the investigators who spent months trying to decode them. The letters appeared to be random, yet Gunther had written them with deliberate care before crossing them out with equal precision. The case should have ended there, filed away as one of those inexplicable moments that punctuate ordinary lives. But 3 weeks later, a witness came forward with a story that changed everything. He'd been driving to his night shift job when he stopped at a rest area near where Gunther's car was found. Around 11:30 that evening, he'd seen 3 men arguing beside a dark sedan. One of them matched Gunther's description perfectly. The other 2 were trying to convince him to get into their car. The witness watched for several minutes before driving away, assuming it was a domestic dispute or business disagreement. When police re-interviewed Gunther's wife, her story collapsed. She admitted lying about the pub. Instead, she said, Gunther had received a mysterious phone call around 9:30. Someone who wouldn't give their name. After hanging up, he'd become visibly upset and said he needed to meet someone. She invented the drinking story because she was afraid the truth would implicate him in something illegal. Investigators began digging deeper into Gunther's recent behavior. What they discovered was a man slowly coming apart. Colleagues described increasing paranoia over the past few months. He'd begun carrying a notebook, recording license plate numbers of cars he believed were following him. He made cryptic references to being watched by management, though he could never explain why or provide evidence. The notebook, recovered from his home, contained dozens of plate numbers that led nowhere. Random vehicles with no connection to Gunther's life or work. Theories multiplied. Some investigators wondered if Gunther had stumbled onto something at the food processing plant. Irregularities in production, safety violations, corporate espionage. Others explored Cold War angles, given Germany's position as a staging ground for intelligence operations. Perhaps those 6 letters were a code, a signal, a cry for help from a man caught in something beyond his understanding. The most unsettling possibility was the simplest, that Günther Stoll had been losing his mind. Schizophrenia can manifest in middle age, often beginning with exactly the kind of paranoid ideation he'd been exhibiting. The meaningless letters, the imaginary surveillance, the phone call that never happened, all symptoms of a psychological break from reality. But if Gunther was delusional, who were the men at the rest stop? Why did his injuries seem inconsistent with a simple car crash? And what explained the complete absence of skid marks where his vehicle left the roadway? The official investigation concluded accidental death. Günther Stoll, they determined, had been driving under the influence, lost control of his car, and died from his injuries. The note was attributed to mental health issues that had gone undiagnosed. Case closed. Except it wasn't closed. Not really. The YOGTZE case became one of Germany's most discussed unsolved mysteries, spawning documentaries, books, and countless online theories. Amateur investigators have proposed everything from organized crime connections to supernatural explanations. None have produced credible evidence. What makes this case so haunting isn't the mystery itself. It's what it reveals about how thin the membrane is between the explicable and the inexplicable. Günther Stoll lived an unremarkable life until the moment he didn't. Something happened to him that October evening, something that transformed a quiet food engineer into the central figure of an enduring puzzle. Perhaps he really was going insane, and those letters were nothing more than the random firing of neurons in a deteriorating brain. Perhaps he'd witnessed something he shouldn't have, or gotten involved with dangerous people, or simply made a series of poor decisions that culminated in tragedy. Or perhaps the truth is something else entirely, something we lack the context or imagination to understand. The letters remain crossed out, rejected by their own author. In that small gesture, Günther Stoll may have been trying to erase whatever thought or fear those letters represented. But some things, once written, can't be taken back. Some mysteries resist all attempts at resolution. On a dark highway in 1984, a man died carrying secrets that died with him. The note in his pocket poses a question that 4 decades of investigation haven't answered. What did Günther Stoll know? And why did knowing it kill him? YOGTZE. 6 letters that mean everything and nothing. A cipher without a key. A final message from a man who took his truth to the grave.
Subscribe to Noctivox, hit the bell, and join us every Saturday to uncover the hidden